Hello, College Biology. This is another cell membrane video, and we will be discussing the topic of passive transport. Passive transport can be divided into a couple of different categories. The first one we're going to deal with is diffusion. So, diffusion is the movement of particles from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. And this occurs because particles have thermal energy. They have kinetic energy. They do not stand still. So what does that mean? Well, that means we've got all these particles jumbled up together. They are not still. They are at least vibrating. Now, they might be moving around wildly because we know that that happens with particles, but they are at least vibrating. So let's take a look at what these vibrating particles are going to do. If they're vibrating and they're near each other, they might vibrate into one another, which causes them to sort of bounce off of each other and travel in opposite directions. So if we imagine these two particles here vibrating, this one vibrating, and they vibrate into each other, and that might send this particle out this way. And maybe this particle will hit this guy here, which will then send it out this way. And so if we look at the sum of these vibrations and these collisions over time, it leads to a pattern for all of the molecules in the area. And that is that they are going to move from this area of high concentration to this area of low concentration over time. Now that direction is called the concentration gradient. From the high side to the low side. Always the concentration gradient goes from high to low. And so that's what we see here. And in these pictures we see, okay, so a few of them have migrated out this way. Now they're going to start having collisions with each other, and some of these might actually get sent back in the reverse direction against the concentration gradient. Turns out that happens. That is important. That happens. But because there are so many more of these guys on the left side than there are on the right side, the overall difference is that if maybe one of these guys gets sent back, then 4 or 5 of these guys are going to get sent forward. So it's not that everything always moves from this side to this side. It's that over time there is more movement from the high side to the low side. And that continues until we reach dynamic equilibrium. At equilibrium, we have an even distribution of molecules on the high concentration and low concentration side. So now we don't have those. We just have one concentration. We are at equilibrium. We have reached balance. And that means that there are some of these particles bumping into each other, sending things back this way. And there are molecules over here bumping into each other, sending them back that way. And they're happening at a comparable rate so that everything is about even. And the concentration's not changing anymore. So we don't have any more changes in concentration. We no longer have a concentration gradient. We're not really doing any more diffusing anymore. We're just bouncing around. Well, how does this matter for biology? Well, hold on. Let me... What? Okay, we'll take that. So this matters for gases. In a biological system, gases are pretty unique, and we're talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide. Now these two molecules are very small compared to the large molecules of lipids, carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids. And they are nonpolar. And they're nonpolar due to their symmetry. Oxygen is obviously nonpolar because these two have the exact same electronegativity. And carbon dioxide is nonpolar because we have a carbon atom in the middle and 2 oxygen atoms on either side. And so even though you would think that the carbon atom would have a partial positive and the oxygens would have a partial negative, what happens is both oxygens end up helping the carbon pull electrons from the other oxygen. So they end up being a dead heat. It ends up being a tie. So carbon dioxide is also nonpolar. So that means that, if we have your cell membrane that's got this fluidity because the phospholipids are not connected to each other, you have this little space in the middle that a small particle can meander through, and because it's nonpolar, it doesn't get pulled back or attracted to the polar heads, so it can actually pass all the way through to the other side. And that happens automatically. Our cells don't need ATP to do that. Our cells don't need protein to do that. That just occurs. So if you have a lot of oxygen, because you just took a deep breath, and then you have blood that doesn't have very much oxygen passing through, then we have a high concentration here, a low concentration here, and oxygen which can diffuse through the cell membrane, and it just passes through. It is an automatic thing. If you've got a lot of carbon dioxide building up in your blood, and you have got lower carbon dioxide in the air, then it will pass right through and get into the lungs, and then we can breathe it out. So cells don't have to do anything. They just have to pass by an area of high concentration. And this works for us going the other direction as well. If we have high oxygen content in our blood and our brain don't have to make decisions. They don't have to say, okay, now I need to redirect this high oxygenated blood to the liver because the liver is specifically low right now. Doesn't have to happen. What happens is we just move the blood. And whenever it passes by something that has a low concentration of oxygen, oxygen will leave the blood and go into those cells. And if those cells have a high concentration of carbon dioxide, they will leave the carbon dioxide will diffuse through the cells and get into the blood. So passive transport doesn't require any energy to move gases through a body. I hope this helps. Struggle well.